Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. So the NXT releases stacked up over the last couple of days. And I purposely waited because I knew something was coming down the pike that was going to be pretty big. So obviously it wasn't really all that big, but he trended for like 5 hours. So the Velveteen Dream has been fired from WWE. In a move that I believed was absolutely predictable since he was taken off TV in the first place. How do I feel about this? As a person who was making videos basically saying, look, until you got some evidence, some real hard, solid evidence of him doing anything, leave the guy alone. That's my initial position. That's still my position today. The problem is that social media is now dictating so much of the wrestling business that you starting to just have social media basically gen up a lot of negativity for guys. And it's not just Velveteen Dream, it's also Drake Wuertz. Drake Wuertz was also released. He was released on the 19th, I believe. So Drake Wuertz and Velveteen Dream, two guys that for the last several months, they have, the internet has been hounding people over these two guys. Velveteen Dream is an accused guy as far as getting into situations that he shouldn't have been in with underage minors, basically just talking to them online. Of course, there's no evidence they actually met or anything, maybe just some inappropriate comments being made, maybe, who knows. But there's other things. Because apparently other people have stories of Velveteen Dream and, him being a penis on head. Artist Rob Schamberger says that he finds Velveteen Dream to be incredibly unprofessional. I don't know what that means, or unprofessional in what way. Considering Velveteen Dream has been in WWE contract for a long time, he has been unable essentially to defend himself against a lot of these accusations and a lot of people saying stuff about him. No doubt WWE told him not to talk about it, just get a lawyer and lawyer up. And then once you lawyer up, you shut up after that. But now that he doesn't have a job anymore, no doubt he's probably going to be out there trying to get his side of the story out. And likely talk about a lot of the things that he experienced when he was in WWE. So who knows what stories he might have to tell about other people who are telling stories about him and, misunderstandings and different things like that. It's all going to come out eventually, So, it is what it is. Am I upset? No, because I kind of figured it was coming. And then after a while, you couldn't even use him on TV without him trending negatively, So I think WWE did a decent job of not bowing down to the mob in the moment. There have been people who have been trying to get him fired for a long time. There was even accounts dedicated to him being fired. It was a visceral hatred of him online, and it's hard to combat that when you're in a public corporation. It's hard to combat the incredible amount of negativity that is surrounding a guy like Velveteen Dream. There was almost no positivity. And any and all of his, I guess you wouldn't even call people who even quote unquote supported him didn't really even support him. They were just kind of like, what did he like? Do you have any evidence? No, then we had to get over it. That was kind of the most I saw most people say is like, okay, he probably didn't do anything. And, if he did do something, we know that he physically didn't touch this kid. So, but none of that stuff mattered. People who are they believed what they wanted to. And ultimately that was it. That was the end of it. He couldn't go to Raw or SmackDown, obviously, because he was just so incredibly toxic. So really what else were they going to do but to release him? I've seen stories since he's been released about, oh, well, he was helping with trainings and stuff like that. And people thought he was going to become a coach. I'm like, the guy's 25. He's like 25 or 26 years old. I think that the Velveteen Dream, along with Tessa Blanchard, is going to go down as two of the, much like Teddy Hart and a few other people. Maybe I put my thought in my head into it, of people who self-destructed. Even if it wasn't the whole stuff with the underage boy, but just basically his behavior in general, then maybe that was enough. If he's done enough to piss off the artist, you know, you have to think about it. But I do think that the internet getting what they wanted, it doesn't do the wrestling business a positive. Let's put it like that. You can't let the internet book the show. You can't. So the Twitter, people getting upset on Twitter, they can't book the show. If you let Twitter book the show, then you're not in control, then you're the mark. So similar things to Drake Ward's. The stories about Drake Works are plentiful. People don't feel comfortable around him. He stormed away during a Black Lives Matter speech, supposedly, when it was mentioned that they were going to be inclusive towards other religions. Of course, nobody. I wasn't there, so I didn't see it. There was the whole thing with him calling into Zoom meetings about children being trafficked at the border, and for some reason people feel like that's a big problem for you to talk about children being trafficked. I fail to see how that's a negative, but one of the big things was his vocal support of like the Proud Boys. That was a big issue. People feel like he's a racist. They feel uncomfortable around him. Not that he actually did anything, but they feel like he's, making them uncomfortable. And look, comfort is not a guarantee in life. Comfort is a luxury. People do a lot of things that they're not comfortable about. He was recently demoted from a position of authority, so he was basically bumped down from head referee, and he was actually doing some liaison work with the office. Remember, Drake Works is one of the guys who was involved with the Riddle rape situation and Candy Cartwright. He was one of those guys involved in that, and he ended up getting out of that lawsuit because the judge decided there wasn't enough evidence to wrap him up in that stuff. But the wrestling websites did a really good job on Drake Works. These guys, they did he didn't do himself any favors, so he didn't shut up. He continued to jump into Zoom meetings and talk about, children being trafficked and other stuff. And he was apparently very vocal about some of his political beliefs, which, is strange because you got Triple H standing in the middle of a ring, apparently, giving a Black Lives Matter speech, which, you have to understand the context of these situations here, because you got a guy who sees Black Lives Matter not as a positive thing, but as a Marxist terrorist organization. And it's hard to say that he's wrong. I mean, when you got these organizations and they're taking money from wrestlers, you've got wrestlers, some of whom are politically motivated, and they're running fundraisers for these organizations that are bailing out quote unquote protesters. They're really rioters, who are burning down buildings and busting windows. So Drake Works is looking at that and saying, like, absolutely not. I don't support that, and nobody should. And he's right. Nobody should support that kind of stuff. But then when you look at from WWE's perspective, they looking at Black Lives Matter as this benign thing that they're just saying. And they currently have a black WWE champion, and they currently have a black women's champion. They just had 2 black women main event WrestleMania. And now you got this guy who people have been saying is the head referee, and he's a talent liaison, and he's got all this power and authority. At least that's what they claimed he did. And he's saying that Black lives doesn't matter. So what do? You sloganeering has done a lot of damage to American politics, because nothing means nothing anymore. Black lives matter except the ones that get killed by black people. Black lives matter except the aborted ones. Black lives matter except the conservatives and the libertarians and people who don't just toe the line of black leftist politics. Those lives don't matter. You know, when you say Black Lives Matter, you don't mean them. You don't mean Enrique Tarrio, one of the black and Cuban, I believe he's a black and Cuban leader of the Proud Boys. His lives don't matter, even though he ended up being a Fed. He ended up being a Fed, you know, so that should tell you something. But the idea is you got a lot of people talking across each other. They're not really understanding each other. They're using the same words. They speak the same language, but in typical collegiate system, the way the collegiate system is set up, man, is basically Oz. You know, there's people walking around with emerald glasses on, and all they see is green. And then you're walking around with not emerald glasses on, and you know that the world is different colors. You know, Drake Wirtz is maybe a little too deep into right-wing politics as far as being hyper conservative and all that sort of stuff. He might be too deep into that stuff, you know. But ultimately, if nobody not only doesn't consider his position, you know, and look at these cities that are burning under the concept of Black Lives Matter. And you can say, oh, well, it's about police brutality. Like, what the hell they got to do with you burning down CVS? What does that got to do with it? How does those two things connect? Oh, the cop shot a guy, so we're going to burn down CVS. A cop shot a guy, so we now rob a jewelry store. How does those two things connected? Why is mob violence from one side okay, mob violence from another side not okay? Nobody see when you're in a position like if you're a Triple H, who's probably the guy who had to pull the trigger and fire these guys. You're not going to sit back and consider that issue. You're going to say, look, this guy's a headache. I don't want to deal with him. He's out of here. And that's it. So do I think that he fired Drake Wirtz because he's woke? No, I think he's just doing this stuff because it's public relations. That's part of their job. You know, Stephanie McMahon is out here doing feminist stuff. They're doing public relations shit, and that stuff is part of it. Black Lives Matter is just part of it. Just like the girl fight and the girl up stuff. It's just all part of their bullshit marketing schemes. It ain't real. Woke capitalism is bullshit. I'll do a video on woke capitalism one day, you know, just to sit down and talk about it in a little bit more. But woke capitalism is all bullshit. It's all marketing. It's all psychographics. It's all about, hey, this is what young people care about, so this is what we need to care about. And then you can't say, well, I don't support Black Lives Matter, and you got fucking black world champion. You got black world champions right now. You can't say that. So not without sinking your whole fucking company. So you give that boilerplate, everybody matters, but you can't say all lives matter. Everybody matters, everybody's valid, all races and genders, because there's more than two genders. Everybody is so equally important, except all the people who get to be fired if they don't agree. But if you disagree with other people, you don't get fired. You know, it's like an Animal Farm. Everybody's equal, except some people are more equal than others. So it's that concept that is floating around the NXT locker room. So Drake Wirtz got harassed by wrestling journalists. They made him sound crazy. They made him sound stupid. And, you know, it was pretty much the end of the road for him. So Velveteen Dream and Drake Wirtz, the internet gets what they want. So that only incentivizes the internet to continue doing this stuff. You know, when you give them what they want, they're incentivized to continue doing what they've been doing. Now, there's likely other reasons, unknown reasons, probably just because the guys are a headache and figure, hey, fuck, we're just going to get the hell out of it. Just be done with it, right? So who else was released? Alexander Wolf. Alexander Wolf was released. His contract will be up on June the 15th or June the 16th, so he only had like a month left anyway. So that's fine. Jessamine Duke, one of the Four Horsewomen, friends of Shayna Baszler, she was released. It sucks that she or Marina Shafir, who I believe is the wife of Roderick Strong, I believe that she them two not being partners with Shayna Baszler is criminal, and WWE not doing the most obvious thing and putting all of them together is a sheer sign of how bad their creative is. that, you know, they can't group like objects. Like they like the oddball friendship so much they can't group like objects. It's like you have 3 apples on the table and you got 2 bananas. And instead of putting the apples with the apples and the bananas with the bananas, you want to put the apples and the bananas together. It's like that's stupid. You know, it doesn't work all the time. It may work with RK Bro, but it doesn't work all the time. And Marina Jessamine Duke, to be quite honest, I don't remember if she was any good. I do remember seeing her on Raw Underground, which is pretty much her element because it was MMA infused. I don't remember her being any good. So I'm not caping for her. What I'm saying is she didn't get a shot. You know, she really didn't do anything in NXT. Likewise, Skylar Story, aka Brandy Lauren, all she did was be a pretty girl who was in the pool when Damian Priest jumped in it, and she literally didn't do anything else. I seen her in Evolve. She is somewhat talented as being sort of a bratty young woman. You know, it's cool, but I don't see her skill like level being really high. There was another guy who was fired. I think his name was Ezra Judge or something like that. I have never seen him before. You know, I think he'll probably be back sometime soon. He says he's gonna work his way back. So we'll see. Vanessa Bourne was also released. Vanessa Bourne has been sitting at home for a long time. She's been putting out interviews, of course, because that's exactly what happens when you get released. Is that, you know, all of a sudden all the wrestling journalists want to talk to you because they want to talk about how bad either how bad things were or where things went wrong. You know, they didn't want to talk to you before, they didn't care. But Vanessa Bourne apparently had some ideas for herself, but they were taken and given to other people, which happens a lot in wrestling. It's so sad that it does happen, but it does. As a personality, I think she had something. I don't know. As a wrestler, I didn't really pay her too much attention. She's pretty. Well, so she's a pretty girl. You know, she's former cheerleader. Maybe will she be back one day? Probably not. Maybe not. Who knows? But we're not missing anything major from her. There was another referee that was fired, Jake Clemens. I don't remember too much about him. I believe he was a referee on TV once or twice. So that's it. You know, there were the reasons these people were released were apparently budget cuts, which doesn't mean what people think it means. People think like, oh, they're running out of money. It's no, you still have a budget no matter how much money you have. And a lot of these people probably just were not developing fast enough. They weren't getting it. And, you know, Brandy Lauren hasn't been on the roster that long, but I don't know how long that Ezra Judge guy was there. Vanessa Bourne had been sitting at home for quite a while. Who knows what the hell was going on with her. So it's a difficult situation. But we already know what happened with Drake Wuertz and Velveteen Dream. They got swift boated by the wrestling websites, whether they did anything or not. The fact of the matter is they were on the wrong side of the right people and they got booted. So it's unfortunate, but life goes on. People have been fired for less than these guys have been fired for. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. 3 Commentaries is a unique voice in pro wrestling commentary. Thank you for your time. Support the channel any way you can, and I'll talk to you guys later.